This screencast is going to review the notes that go along with passive and active voice. If you are taking notes, you should be doing that in your interactive notebook on the next blank page. So the standard we're going to be working on goes with 8th grade grammar, demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar, and usage when writing or speaking. Specifically, form and use verbs in the active and passive voice. Now we're trying something a little bit different. You took a pre-assessment yesterday on No Red Ink. If you scored an 80% or better on your pre-assessment, I'm giving you the choice of 3 different ways to learn this. You can choose to go through it in class with me and do self-directed. However, if you're watching the screencast, it sounds like you are choosing the second option, which is to do some guided instruction where I'll still go through the information, but maybe a little bit more quickly, and you can work at your own pace. All of the documents are going to be linked into here along with the keys, so you can check your own work. The third option is direct instruction. You can use the screencast, you can use YouTube, you can Google, whatever it is that you want to do to figure out the best way for you to learn the information. And so what I've done is set up some bullet points here of all the information that you need to make sure that you know. So the key to the notes, the 2-column notes are here. I'll be linking the screencast here as well. By the end of this unit, and by Friday, when we take our quiz, you should be able to explain the difference between active and passive voice, identify whether sentences are written in active or passive voice, and I gave you 2 worksheets to practice. This is one that my class who's working with me will be doing. I'll submit the key here as well. If you feel that you want some extra practice, there's a second answer sheet, and I will link the key there as well. You also need to be able to write and change sentences. Whether I give them to you in active, you need to change them to passive, or in passive and change them to active voice. And there's a worksheet here to practice that. And then you need to identify situations when it's appropriate to use the different voices, and that really comes through in our notes. And then I put a final practice that's more of a study guide to help you with preparing for the quiz on Friday. So if you're doing 2-column notes, you know that we start with a question, and then on the right side of the notes we'll answer it. So what is a verb? In order to understand active and passive voice, we have to make sure we have a solid understanding of what verbs are. So a verb is a word or a group of words, if it has a helping verb, that expresses an action, a condition, or a state of being. They also show the time in which the action took place, and we call that verb tense, whether it's in the present, past, the future. We also have perfect and progressive tenses. So there are all kinds of different ways that we can form verbs to get our meaning across. A verb can also show whether the subject is performing the action or if the action is being or receiving the action by changing the voice, and that's what active and passive voice is. So let's start with active voice because that's the one that we use the most. What is active voice? A verb is active if the subject performs the action. And I know that seems rather simple to explain, but most of the sentences we write are in active voice. The subject is my brother. What did he do? He did the action of taking out the trash. My brother took out the trash. Sarah's the subject here. She's doing the action of driving. Sarah drives my sister to art school. And in the last example, Alex is the subject, and he does the action of cooking. Alex cooked dinner for my family last night. When we look at why does active voice matter, we probably will be more clear when we get to passive voice, but active voice is very clear. It gets your point across very quickly and easily without any confusion. My little brother stole the car. There's my subject, brother. What did he do? He stole. There's no question about what happened. It's very clear. It also eliminates some wordiness. If I look at the sentence, I was hugged by my mom, there's a much easier way of saying that. Think of who's the subject, my mom, doing the action. My mom hugged me. And this will make a little bit more sense when we talk about when it's appropriate to use passive voice. So what is passive voice? A verb is passive if the action is performed on the subject. And you'll see here that the background that I used was a hammock. When I think of a hammock, it's kind of a place to rest. A passive voice just kind of sits back a little bit. It's not as obvious maybe. It's not as quick to show its meaning. A passive verb is made from a form of be and the past participle of a verb. And we just talked about participles when we were working on our verbals. So a participle is a verb that's in an ed or ing form. The trash was taken out by my brother. The person who's actually doing this work is the brother. The way that the sentence is formed, it's showing that the action was done to the trash. The trash was taken out by my brother. A funny hint or another way to think about whether your verb is in passive voice, if you could put by zombies after the verb, then it's passive. The trash was taken out by zombies. Let's go back and look at our active sentences here. If I said my little brother stole by zombies, that doesn't work here. My mom hugged by zombies, that doesn't work. I was hugged by zombies does work. So if you can, just something silly to try, if you can put by zombies after your verb, then it's in passive voice. My sister was driven to art school by Sarah. In this case, Sarah's the one who's actually doing the driving, but in the prepositional phrase at the end is where she's placed. The subject, sister, is having the action put upon her. My sister was driven to art school by Sarah. I could also check it. My sister was driven by zombies. That works, so it's in passive voice. The last one, a dinner was cooked by Alex for his family. So hopefully by now you're noticing that a lot of times in passive voice, that subject is in a prepositional phrase with by my brother, by Sarah, by Alex. A dinner was cooked. The dinner is having the action placed upon it. A dinner was cooked by Alex for his family last night. I could do my check. A dinner was cooked by zombies. Now, especially I think it's more obvious in this last sentence how you can see how wordy that is. It would be much more simple to say Alex cooked dinner for his family last night. So now let's look at why or when you should be using passive voice, because primarily your focus should be on active. When you don't know who performed the action, or you want to be vague about the action. So for example, my car was stolen. I don't know who stole the car, or maybe I don't want to tell who stole it. I'm trying to be vague. So the car is the subject, and the action that's being done to the car was stolen. It has that helping verb was. Another time is if you really want your focus to be on the receiver of the action. Maybe that's the more important part of the sentence. Here, the house was demolished by the storm. The storm is doing the action, but what I'm really trying to emphasize here is the damage that was done to the house. So in this case, I want my house to be the subject. The house was demolished by the storm. And then the last one is when we're doing technical writing. So I think of like lab reports, or if you're talking about a science report. Fracking is used to discover oil. And here's another case where we don't really have a person doing that action, or we don't know who is doing that action. Now I can go back and check with my zombie format. My car was stolen by zombies. The house was demolished by zombies. Fracking is used by zombies. So in all of those cases, it's obvious that I'm using passive voice. So one of the things we need to watch out for is a shift in voice. A shift is a change. So we do not want to, and I think of this especially when you're using compound or complex sentences that have a dependent clause, make sure that you're consistent. If you start off in one voice, then you need to make sure you stay in that voice. And typically that should be active voice. All right, so that's the end of the notes here. You're going to get any of the worksheets that you want to practice. If you're doing this independently and you want more clarification, you can always go find some online games. I have No Red Ink set up with a couple of activities. You could go watch some other YouTube videos. There's so many resources at your fingertips because you have your Chromebook. So just make sure that you have a good understanding of those objectives at the beginning of the slide presentation, because that's what I'll be testing you on Friday.